To many people, the month of April is synonymous with Earth Day, and this year, Earth Day is marking its 55th year. Can you believe that? That is 55 years of encouraging politicians and businesses and just average people to take steps to ensure we have a sustainable planet Earth. Salthaven Wildlife has heard that call, and that's what we're going to explore today. The efforts Salthaven has taken to reduce its carbon footprint and how you can take some of what we're doing and use it in your own home. If this is your first time tuning into Wild About Wildlife, welcome. It is great to have you here. I'm your host, Kathy Mueller, and joining me today is Salthaven founder Brian Salt, along with Lori Miller, one of Salthaven's most engaged volunteers. Welcome back, you two. It's great to have you here, too.
Good to be here.
Very good to be here. Thank you, Kathy.
So the global theme for Earth Day 2025 is Our Power, Our Planet. And it's really all about getting people around the world to get behind the idea of renewable energy. And the goal is to triple global generation of clean electricity within 5 years. Sounds like a tall order, but every little step counts. And Brian, Salthaven actually took a pretty big step from 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even longer now. And you installed in solar panels. So tell me about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, solar panels have always been something that we've wanted, but it wasn't until I did a bit of a tour through the Sifton properties there at W5 in London and realized how many solar panels they had there that was running everything. It was suggested to me during that tour that maybe I should apply for a grant with Sifton. And so I did, and it came through. So now we have solar panels, complements of the Sifton Corporation, that run just about everything at Salthaven. It's absolutely amazing. You know, we run incubators and heating pads, and the electricity that we use at Salthaven is crazy, and it would cost us a lot, but we've managed to reduce that cost considerably with the solar panels. The solar panels provide all the electricity in the clinic and the mews and at the house from about 7:30 in the morning until almost 10 o'clock at night. And so that saving is incredible. And, the money that we're saving from that can be used in building enclosures and food for the animals and medications and so on. So it's not a little thing. It's huge.
How much would you say that your electricity bill has dropped since you installed the solar panels?
I would say probably about 40%, but you got to take into consideration during the winter, we don't generate that much solar power because the sun's lower, there's snow on the panels and so on. But during the summertime, it's upwards of about 90% that of the electricity needs are covered by the solar panels. And that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. When you think of, and Lori, you know this well too from all the laundry that you have done over the years at Salthaven. You guys do a lot of laundry. You go through not just a lot of electricity for laundry, but water as well. And Brian, so you've also done something to help with the water generation to Salthaven.
Yeah, we realize that especially in the winter months, we don't use that much hot water, but a hot water tank is still being heated and a lot of wasted energy there. So what we did was we implemented a hot water on demand tank, and the hot water is generated as you need it, and we don't have to worry about heating that huge hot water tank and keeping it that way, especially at times when we don't need it, like in the wintertime. So that in itself has saved us quite a bit too, because as you mentioned, we do a lot of laundry at Salthaven.
Okay, and then Lori, let's bring you in, and this is something that is very close to your heart. You help lead the Salthaven's garden. You can't really go greener than having a garden, right? So, how did that all get started? Why did you get involved? Yeah, tell us about the garden.
So it didn't start with me. It started with some former dedicated volunteers, I'm going to say about 6 years ago, with the idea that there's so many layers of savings and there's so many positive feedbacks that you get from growing food locally. So number one, our goal is to grow pesticide free berries and vegetables and lettuce and greens for the patients. Number two, we're reducing plastic because whenever you go, if you don't go to a local farmer market and you are buying supplies throughout the year, and let me tell you, those birds eat way more than you can ever imagine fits in those little bodies. All that plastic, right? Those containers, that's a whole other green, not green, but a whole other carbon footprint issue. The transportation to food, of getting food and back and forth. So it's kind of a multi-layered benefit to doing it locally. So in that garden, we do try to grow some of the favorites. So the possums are big fans of kale. Robins, cedar waxwings, a lot of our birds are huge fans of the raspberries, the blackberries, the blueberries. So it was just a way of contributing. It saves money. One thing you notice is when you reduce your carbon footprint or you go green in even the smallest way, you always end up saving money. You're saving the planet and you're saving the dollar. These seem to be the two competing entities in the world anyway. So as metaphorically, they both happen simultaneously. You save them both at the same time.
So you're feeding the wildlife patients what you're growing in the garden, and is that something that you're, obviously we can't grow in a garden year round in our climate. So how far into the colder season does the food that you grow get you?
We actually have two bumper crops of raspberries. So we have a ton of raspberries, right, Brian, early in the season for all the spring babies, birds and fledglings that come in. And then we get another crop of raspberries later. Last time I was in, we still had berries, raspberries, strawberries, and kale frozen in the freezer from the garden, and that will get the clinic through the winter. We still have to supplement outside. We're not big enough to do all of it. That would require more land, more volunteers, but it has grown every year. The garden is bigger. Every year the garden is better and more productive. We grow a lot of greens for the bunnies, which again, they consume a lot, don't they, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always, in a pinch, it's great to just run outside to the grounds and pick some clover and dandelions, or run out to the garden and pick some fresh mixed greens, some lettuce and some kale. Doesn't get sweeter than that, and it cuts down on our budget. We haven't done the math yet on the food budget, but I think I would like to kind of try to keep track of that this year and see not only are we reducing our carbon footprint and our plastic container issues, but we're also, I think, saving some money. I'm not sure quite yet how much, but.
Now, people will say, oh my gosh, I would love to do a garden at home, but there's so much work involved. I don't know the first thing about growing anything. I don't have a green thumb. Every time I even have a cactus, it dies. Lori, walk people through, and maybe there are some baby steps that people at home can take.
Absolutely, baby steps. Start with a couple of pots. Tomatoes and cucumbers are surefire, easy peasy. Or a couple of garden boxes. Grow things that are more surface growing. In order to get things like carrots and potatoes and so on, beets, you need a deeper soil or a deeper sandy structure soil. But there's you can grow sunflowers right on your patio in a thing and let the birds come and visit you. But cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers are probably the three easiest for a vegetable garden starter. And even if you only have a few plants, you take good care of them and they're bountiful. You'll still be giving tomatoes and cucumbers to your neighbors. I think everybody would benefit by just having a couple of vegetables in there, even their flower planters. You can stick a tomato plant right in your flower planter. It all works. It's fun, and that would be my best advice. I want people to have a bit of success first. So those would be tomatoes number one. As a child, just my mind being blown the first time I planted seeds, and a few days later there was a little green thing, and then I think it was beans in grade 3. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe that turned into something I could eat. I just thought, this is the coolest miracle ever. How come everyone doesn't scream about this every day? I just thought, being able to grow our own food. I think we forget where it comes from sometimes. So just getting your hands a little bit in the dirt is really good for the soul.
Yeah, and when you talk about doing that as a kid, I remember that too. It was like an old egg carton, right? And you had the a little piece of a little bit of dirt in each of the little egg cups, and then, like you say, this little sprout starts coming up, and it's like, oh my gosh, look what I made! And then to be able to taste the rewards of your efforts, right? It's amazing. Yeah. So the next question then would be, what about critters? What are your tips for keeping critters away from your garden at Salthaven?
Well, we at Salthaven, we do sometimes just come out and we put our hands on our hips and go, oh, who was here yesterday? Who was here last night? We do have, as much as you don't want plastic in your garden, but we do have some of those spin wheels, that you can get as a distraction. We do sometimes have to use a bit of chicken wire if we notice a patch has become a favorite go-to patch. But having animals nibble here and there, they've never eaten more than what we're growing. Like they've never completely decimated the sunflowers or decimated the entire lettuce rows or ate every tomato. Like they don't. There's one and Brian's. It's like the Bugs Bunny cartoon. There's Brian and a bunny that have this battle where he's always trying to figure out. And I don't know if it's the same bunny where they're getting in. And right, Brian, how many times have you looked for the holes and patched holes? And yeah, but I mean there's a lot of there's fun things that happen in the garden. Like there's some of the species that just they move in. We've got every year, because of the mulch and the gravel and the texture in between the rows, we have a killdeer that nests, and her eggs look just like or oxidized or decomposing mulch. And so we have to put our little, we feel quite proud of raising the little killdeer families in the garden, but you have to mark it off. And that would go for anybody that has plants at home. You have to keep an eye on things. You might have to devise, some people say coffee grains works, but whatever you do, you don't want to be using any kind of chemical, never any kind of poison. That does not solve the problem. It just moves it somewhere else.
Expand on that a little bit about the idea of not using poisons because it doesn't solve the problem, but it just pushes it somewhere else. So expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, moving the problem somewhere else is a good way of putting it, because every year we see animals that are suffering miserably from things like secondary rodenticide. A little mouse nibbles on rat poison, and an owl or a hawk catches that mouse. That poison moves right up the food chain, and we see, well, they suffer miserably from it, and a lot of them don't make it. But there are other things, that you might use in the garden that could be particularly harmful to animals as well. So you need to be just sensitive to those kind of things. Around the Salthaven garden, we have a big fence. And every year, those bunnies, they find a way of getting around or under. And so you make the trip around it every day just to see, okay, all right, there's a little hole there. And you patch it up. But, just changing our perspective and our sense of what is right and wrong in the environment in our own backyards can make a big difference. You think, well, what difference can I make? Well, it's a good question, but collectively, we can make a big difference right starting in our very own backyard.
That's a good way to segue into the impact of not keeping our environment clean and the impact that it does have on wildlife. I know in the past, Brian, you've taken volunteers out along the Thames River, and with garbage bags and the amount of trash that is collected in that little bit. So, talk a little bit about that, the kind of things that you've found while doing that sort of a cleanup, and then also the kind of impact specifically that is having on the patients that end up at Salthaven.
We have taken volunteers out to areas to clean it up along rivers and lakes, and even on ramps going out onto the 402. Man, it's amazing the amount of garbage, and you don't see it because the weeds grow tall. But as soon as they cut the weeds, man, it's like a garbage dump in there. It's incredible. And animals, they go in, they're curious, they pick up something, they swallow a bottle cap or something, and before they know it, they have a blockage, and then they're hurting. So it takes such little effort to take that garbage home and put it in the trash where it belongs. For every piece of trash you put in the garbage, you'll never see them, but it's quite likely that you're saving a life by doing that. That's how important it is. So that's something that each and every one of us can do and make a huge difference.
For that wildlife that does swallow that bottle cap and then ends up at Salthaven with a blockage, what's involved in helping that patient recover from that? The kind of effort, the kind of cost involved to have a successful outcome?
Yeah, well, oftentimes there's nothing we can do. That's the sad part of it. The damage has already been done. But I'll give you a good example. Scott Gillingwater, who was on your show just recently, he we found this spiny back softshell turtle, and it had a leader wire, assumedly attached to a hook coming out of its mouth. When we had it x-rayed, it wasn't one hook, it was 4 hooks that had to be removed. And that was done, and we were able to release that turtle. But those are the kind of things that are left in the environment that wildlife end up with it, and it's a problem.
I was just going to add to that, like, reducing our carbon footprint and going green means reducing plastic and reducing garbage and being responsible for the garbage that you have. And another thing, Brian, that we've seen is, Christmas decorations outside that are not being monitored. Halloween decorations are a nightmare. Those fake cobwebs, helium balloons with the swirly ribbon. I can't tell you. All my friends know if there's a balloon floating around, if I can reach it, it's going in my car and it's going home. It's just a matter of being responsible for the waste that you produce. If you're having a party and you have balloons, then check those balloons. Check them every hour if it's a windy day. Make sure that your garbage is properly disposed of and secure, because that ribbon ends up, my gosh, about around a young bird's neck. You're right, Brian. Like, it doesn't take a big effort on our part to just be responsible for those kinds of things if we're using those kinds of things. Fishing line, and my poor husband won't fish anymore because he just won't because he's so worried that he's going to break a line and lose a hook, and now he won't. So,
and that's something we see every year. And right now we're getting maybe 4 or 5 calls a week for geese and ducks that have line wrapped around their leg or legs. And it's a horrible situation because they can still fly, so you can't catch them. And they're living with that pain because of the expansionary us as humans, that aren't taking care of the environment in the way they should. We've seen, we had a gull that came in a couple of years ago that had both legs that were severed and the feet were just kind of hanging there. And it was because of this line that was on their legs. But when we got them back to Salthaven and we started removing the line, it wasn't fishing line. It was beach towel thread. And it was breaking as we were taking it off, but nonetheless strong enough to do the job that it did. So again, every little piece that we see that shouldn't be there, pick it up, put it in the trash. There's a good chance you're going to be saving a life.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all seen it where people are throwing things out the window of their cars. When people throw cigarette butts out the window of their cars, it just drives me bonkers. But I also don't want to paint people with the same brush. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of things that we're leaving behind that we're doing accidentally. We don't even know or realize that it's happened.
the little dog bags. I've been where I've gotten to a park and 2 of my dog bags in a windy day have been sucked out of my car, and I know that's not good, and I may find one, but I may not. The more you reuse at home and the more you recycle, the less garbage you're going to make, so the less chance you have of more garbage getting out into the environment too. I stopped. I have so many plastic bags right now, it's kind of a nightmare for me. I haven't purchased like a sandwich bag or any sort of bag I'm going to say around COVID, whenever that was, I don't even know now. And I wash and recycle every bag, and I feel like I could supply enough bags for my neighborhood. It's amazing how much of our world it's plastic in plastic in plastic. And again, that's petrochemical, that's the oil industry, that's carbon footprint, that's carbon pollution during manufacturing, and then now it's in the environment. I was not aware. I honestly just did it as an experiment, and now when I look at my hoard of plastic, I'm really aware of how much we do use and how much of it comes in just things that we're just buying as part of life and part of family life. And so it's little things like that, if people had a few ideas that they could just do at home, that would make a difference. And all of us doing it, as you said, Brian, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think you were saying earlier too that it's the collective, right? So if everybody is doing something small, it doesn't have to be something as grand as like we're not telling people run out and put solar panels on your house. If you can afford it and you can do it, great. But a lot of us can't afford to do that. So take the steps that you can do. And things like Lori, you mentioned about you reusing the Ziploc bags. I do that myself too. But newspapers, you guys reuse a lot of newspapers at Salthaven, right?
Yeah, inside the cages, and yeah, a lot of newspaper gets used. It's much better to use the newspaper that is going to end up in landfill than to use towels that are going to have to be washed and use detergent and then dryer, electricity, and so on. Another thing that I just thought of that we do at Salthaven is when we first moved to our location in Strathroy, we were seeing a bird strike probably every few days, and I got to thinking, this is kind of counterproductive. Like we're trying to save birds, and they're beating themselves up on our windows. And most windows that birds fly into are windows of homes. They're not the tall monolith skyscrapers. They're just more glass in our homes than there is on these large buildings. So we researched it, and we found a product called Feather Friendly, and it's just dots that we put on the window. And since we've put those up, we've maybe had 2 or 3 window strikes in the last 4 or 5 years. So they really do work. Those big stickers of hawks and owls and whatnot, they don't work. We tried it, been there, done that, don't
Yeah.
work. But these little dots are just like magic. Birds see things different than we do. They see colors that we can't. They see into the ultraviolet range. We can't see that. And these little dots show up like beacons for them, so that if they're headed for the window because they're being chased by a hawk or something, they can veer off and go elsewhere.
There's a lot of other things, though, Brian, that we do at Salthaven. Like we recycle the newspapers. We reuse linens that would have ended up in the landfill. Sheets to cover cages for privacy and stress reduction and things like that. We use, wood pallets we will use for some resources and construction material. We don't use chemicals to repel insects. So we have, through consulting with the garden group, there's plants that go on the outdoor shelves of the Muse, and they have, I forget what we did this year, maybe lavender, catnip, lemon balm. There's a whole list you can look up of those mint kind of aromatic plants that mosquitoes aren't fond of. And so that was a good deterrent for mosquito entry into enclosures. We have all of the new trees that we planted are all Ontario Carolinian zone native trees that will provide shelter, nesting material, and food sources. So a lot of different berry trees. Even our dishes, right? Our dishes that people would throw away. And again, saving money and making a planet-friendly choice. They seem to always go hand in hand. We are just very eco-friendly, just at the core in the way we use our materials, I think, and gather our materials.
Yeah, and we're not telling people don't go out and buy that Ziploc bag or don't go out and buy that new towel because people have to live, right? You have to live.
Oh,
But
I love a new towel. I love a new towel. And then I know where my old one can go.
well, and that's it, right? It's just maybe give a second thought before just throwing something in the trash. Can I reuse this somehow? Think outside the box. Does it have another purpose besides what it was originally meant for? Can you donate it somewhere, such as Salthaven, right? There are so many things that small steps. And I think that's the key thing. If any of our listeners take something away, it's that it doesn't have to be this grand gesture. It can be something small. A lot of things that Salthaven is doing they're small gestures just on a grander scale because the clinic is large. But it's stuff that people can do at home. So like you said, recycling those linens, reusing those, the newspaper, the Ziploc bags, right? There's so many things that people can do in their own home.
There's so many organizations just in London that have tons of resources, right? Climate Action London, Talbot Land Trust, Reforest London, Salthaven, Green Economy London. I can't. There's Bird Friendly Ontario. There's just a list. Like you could put those mosquito repelling flowering pots around your patio, and now you don't need, bug zappers. And there's other ways, and you'll save money because the plants, some of them come back. I do notice a lot of the younger people, they love to thrift. They love to do that treasure hunting and get all those funky, cool clothes and these earrings. So you can't see, but there's a sunflower and a little bumblebee. Secondhand, Goodwill. Thank you. Whoever donated, thank you. And I love them because it's a little bee and a flower. And again, when you're buying clothing that's already been through the manufacture and the transportation and the packaging and everything else, and you're buying that secondhand clothing, it's not going into a landfill, and you're not repeating a carbon footprint by buying a new one. So, and you're saving money. So a lot of people would love just to save money and know that they're doing even one little thing, right? Brian, you always say in your stories, the boy picks up the clam, or I'm sorry, I don't remember, but
The starfish.
sorry, yeah, the starfish. But if everyone picks up a starfish, now that's a lot of starfish.
You might need to explain that starfish story, Brian.
Well, the story goes that there was an older gentleman that was walking down the beach one day, and he was feeling the warm sun on his back, and the gulls overhead were screaming. And as he was walking down the beach, he noticed this little boy that was throwing things in the water, which wasn't so unusual, but it just went on and on. And so the older gentleman made his way down the beach, and when he approached the boy, he said, "Young man, what are you doing?" And the boy explained to him that the tide had gone out, and all these starfish had been washed up on shore. Unless they get back in the water, they're going to die. And so the older gentleman looked around and kind of chuckled and said, "Young man, there are hundreds of starfish on this beach. Do you really think you're going to make a difference?" And with that, the young boy stooped down, picked up another little starfish, and threw it in the water, and looked the gentleman right in the eye. And he said, "Well, now it made a difference to that one, didn't it?"
Yeah.
And that same principle applies at Salthaven. We know we can't save them all, but it makes a difference to the ones that we can save. And not only that, but it makes a difference to the volunteers that work with those animals, because hearts are touched and minds are open to the possibilities. And that same principle applies to what we do in the environment as well. The more involved we get in the environment, in our own backyards, right around us, the more sensitive we become to it, and the world could be a much better place for it.
Well, that is the perfect place to end. So, for those who are tuning in, I hope that we inspired you to take some action and make your world a little greener. If you can't get to an official Earth Day event, you can always, organize your own later in the year. Take your family on the hike and do a cleanup, or even just grab a garbage bag the next time you're going out for a walk, and you'd be amazed at how much stuff you're going to come home with. It's something so simple, but as we've been talking about, it has a huge impact, and you will be helping to save wildlife, and that means they don't end up at Salthaven. So if you are looking for ways to get involved on Earth Day, I've included several links to activities in this episode's notes, and there are a whole bunch of links there to a lot of the organizations that Lori was mentioning that exist in the London area that are doing what they can to help keep Mother Earth green. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.